Hey, folks, welcome to ShoutOutFromThePit.com, where we bring stories and topics designed to bring you hope and add to your recovery toolbox. I'm Bob, the Old Rucker, and joining us today are ladies. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. We'll start with you.
Hey, shout out, I'm Mandy.
Mandy.
Hey, shout out, I'm Katrina.
Hey, Katrina.
Hey, shout out, I'm Paula.
All right. Hey, ladies, first of all, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and hang out with us. I know you guys are busy. You always got stuff going on. Mandy, I don't know, we've been doing some stuff together in the past, and every time, you sit with me on the show, I just want you to know how blessed I am. You bring so much to the table, and I'm really excited to hear, your story tonight, Trina. This is great for me, and my growth. I heard your story recently, and I was like, I've got to hope that you can, carve some time out to get on the show. I've gotten to know Paula over the last few months. I love the things that you bring to the table. So thank you again for, coming to join us. And I'm looking forward to the future and doing other stuff with you ladies. Okay. So, as always, I appreciate y'all, and I'm grateful for the audience that's out there. You taking the time out to listen to our show, and remember, you are not alone. And I hope you hear some nuggets tonight that you can add to your toolbox and help your recovery journey. All right. So, before we get started, I learned something recently that I think is important, and I think I'd like to share it with you guys. Do any of you guys have challenges with mosquitoes?
Yes.
Do you now? Okay. Do you? Oh, whatever.
Yep.
Okay. First question I have for you. Do you know what your blood type is?
No.
Do you know?
Yes.
What is it?
Oh, positive.
So is mine. That's their favorite blood. Yeah, can you believe that? Mosquitoes have a favorite? That's true. And there's
I thought it was royal blood, but...
Oh, go on with your bad self. Oh, yeah. Okay. Queen Mandy.
Maybe you're the part of the court or something.
So there's two other things about them that I didn't know. And the first thing I want to tell you is that I've learned that exercise is actually bad for you. Exercise creates this thing called lactic acid, right? Mosquitoes love lactic acid. So if you don't exercise, you're smart. The third thing I learned about mosquitoes is that they absolutely love alcohol. Pause for effect. I don't think any of us have anything to worry about with that area. But at one time, I think we could identify and wondered why, at a party where people are moderate drinkers and we're not moderate, we're over the top. Why are we catching all the mosquitoes, right? Okay. Anyway, that's your your useless information for the night. Okay, so you ladies have known each other for a while, right?
Several years.
I did not know that there was I knew in a way there was a connection between you, Mandy, and you, Trina. I knew that from visiting one of the groups that my home away from home group, What I didn't know is that you guys, Paula, you and Trina actually work together. So you guys have known each other a minute too. I just think that's pretty wild. Okay, so I don't have any strangers here. That's cool. But since I don't have any strangers, what kind of, stories do you guys have about each other?
Well, I don't really have any stories. I have some fond memories. I'll just call them as memories. I remember when I first met Katrina. He was at an area assembly, and we was just stood out there smoking. And the funny thing is that it's like we clicked straight off the bat. And Paula was there too. That's right, Paula was there too. And we just kind of clicked right off the bat and didn't see each other for several years. And then when we came out to my group, it was like, I just saw her yesterday. That's the amazing thing about this program. That connection never dies.
But I personally, I like her little saying, like, her God met my God, and it was in sync. And, I don't meet people in Alcoholics Anonymous that I always click with like that. It's like I could go months without seeing Mandy and pick up right where I left off. It's like I met her at area assembly, and it was Annette that was with me that day.
Oh, okay.
Annette recently passed, and yesterday, as a matter of fact, she passed, and she was a very intricate part of AA with me too as well. But when I met Mandy, it was just like we just in sync to each other. And I had probably a friend when I was real young, in my 20s, that I met that became my best friend, like almost instantaneously. And she later passed away of cancerous tumors when she was like 25. That's the first time I ever heard that saying of one day at a time. And I know that she came back, she got sober and she came back. And I didn't know all this stuff at the time. Of course, I wasn't sober. And she came back and she made amends to my daughter and my mom and my dad and my family and the way she behaved back then and all these things. And I had no idea. And then she said that to me on the phone when I called her. She's like, Katrina, I'm dying. And I just take every day, one day at a time. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't really get it at the time. It's like you really missed the mark. It's like I missed a lot of marks back in the day. There's a lot of things that people would say to me and I just missed the mark. It's like, oh, okay, right over the head. And it just didn't happen like that. And that's Mandy reminded me a lot of Sherry and I love Sherry. I love Sherry to this day. She's part of my story. She's part of my growing up. And what a beautiful thing, And she left behind 3 kids, and but that was her time, And somehow in that, it wasn't mine. It probably should have been a whole bunch of times, and yet it wasn't. Whole bunch of times. But Mandy I met at the area assembly. Paula I met in the women's grace meeting in Conway, Arkansas. And we became immediate friends, and she befriended me, and I'm very protective over my friends, sometimes to a fault. I got to work on that. It's like, I've worked
True
on it
story.
over the years.
True story.
But, it's like, I promise you, nobody is going to be mean. It's like, thou shalt not talk to my friend that way. And, and listen, everybody's grown, but I don't know. It's just something in me that's like the instantaneous. I'm a protector of people. And I'm especially, it's like, given my, my career, it's kind of not ironic that I do what I do for a living, because I'm very protective over people, and especially people who can't protect themselves.
That's a huge testimony on her recovery, though, because, once we hear her story, Katrina didn't care about anybody but Katrina.
So before we get into that, I met you all at 3 different groups. And even though I've seen 2 of you at the same group, I met you at different groups. I met you about 7 years ago, Mandy.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
Yeah, and your contributions were so... I needed them at the time, especially, and I was like, "Gosh, I really like what I hear here." And then, of course, I moved to another area, and then when I ran into you at the Cabot group, that's when I heard Trina. That's the first time I heard you speak, and not from the podium, so to speak, but just contribution. And I thought, "Gosh, man, what a powerful, I loved it." And then, of course, recently, I got to hear your actual story. So wonderful. Paula bounced into my home group, I guess, a couple, 3, 4, 5 months ago. I don't even, time flies. And right from your get-go, your introduction that you're the problem, I thought, God, I like her, and you're so... raw, transparent, genuine. I'm like, what? And so here I am sitting with 3 people that I admire that I really didn't even know that you guys knew each other as well as you do. So that just kind of adds to the flavor of the get together tonight. But we haven't heard any mud. Give me some mud on Paula the Problem. That look is priceless.
Maybe you, Katrina.
Wow.
Sling it.
I don't think I have any mud on her. I will tell you this, that she befriended me when nobody else did. I went to a group, and it wasn't the most friendly group, and I just moved here from Colorado. And so it's kind of like, sometimes you get in a group and they're cliquish. And I'm not real fond of cliquish groups, and I'm that girl that will call you out on it. I will check you real fast about that, because that's not what AA is. AA is all inclusive and never exclusive.
That's right.
And that's what I was taught by the old timers in these rooms, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I'm an absolute about that. Like, I'm all inclusive, never exclusive. I don't ever shun or, I don't ever want to make somebody feel like they're unwanted or unloved, because I know what it was like when I came in the rooms, even as an old timer, because I came in here, I was 18 years sober when I moved up in this area. And so, it's like, even when I came up here and coming from another place, it's like I'm meeting all these new women and all these new faces and places. And, there's always another Bob and a Jim and a Bill and, all these another Mandy, another Paula, another Katrina, maybe not the same names and different faces, but the same. And so for me, when I came in this area, when that group was kind of shunning or, niches or whatever you want to call it, cliquish, Paula just loved me anyway. She just friended me and she just loved me anyway. I think Paula with a fault, it may be that maybe she loves the wrong people. Maybe.
Okay, so I don't see that. I guess I'm not going to get any mud on Paula, but what I do see is she's brought new people in. She's always there like a mother hen. Right. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I admire that because I agree with you. I travel. I used to travel a lot. I don't travel so much anymore. So I got a chance to go to a lot of places. And there's some places I felt like I should have left 5 minutes before I got there. I wiped my feet off on the way out. It's just like, gosh, this was just awkward. And that is a showstopper for some people that are searching and trying to, save their lives, and they don't necessarily know that, but they know that they're at the end of their rope, and then they run into people like Paula, Mandy, Trina, and they, there's some hope for me, But let's.
Well, let me tell you something. I'll throw some mud out on my own. First of all, I want to tell you, I didn't say all this earlier, but I met Mandy at Cabot. And one of the things Mandy and I have in common is she was born in England, and so was I. But she kept her accent. I did not. I've got that Southern thing. But one of the things I see for me is that I always go for the underdog. I don't care what lifestyle they came from. We have a girl in our group that nobody really cares about, nobody likes. And I just took her under my wing and brought her back to AA because that's what people did for me.
Yep.
I always felt like the underdog because of my past. And I always feel like if nobody else is going to put their hand out, I'm going to, because someone did that for me. So I might love the wrong people or care about the wrong people, but I also care about the right people in my life.
Yes.
To know that they are going to take that wrong person and hopefully give them an understanding that nobody else can.
That's right. That's
so
good.
For me,
good word.
And when I met Katrina, people were snobs. That's just all there is to it. They are snobs. And I wasn't about to do that because, of course, I go for the underdog. And right then and there, that was what was going on. And we became good friends. And we've worked together in 2 different jobs. Well, 1 different job, but we've walked the same line.
That's cool. So you're an underdog fan.
When I say that Paula loves the wrong people, I don't mean that in the wrong way. I mean that like she loves them to a fault, and then her feelings get hurt because it's to a fault. And I've probably done it too. I will tell you that when I met Paula, they were snobs, and I still walked in my recovery.
Good.
I walk in my recovery no matter what, because that's the way the old timers taught me to walk in my recovery. It doesn't matter what they do. It matters what I do.
That's right. That's right.
How I react to it. Where she had gotten her feelings hurt. I'll just tell that. That's the story. She got her feelings hurt one night over a situation. And I was like, you know what, honey? Don't worry about that stuff. Girl, other people love you, and it don't matter what they do.
That's
they
right.
They can go on and do themselves.
Well, we're sensitive people too.
We are.
You're human, and you're going to get your feelings hurt. The difference is you don't have to live in it.
That's right. Well, my sponsor used to tell me, "Hey, Bob, it's okay to sit on the pity pot. It's just not okay to stay there."
In that particular moment, it was just something that was short-lived, and it hurt her feelings, and that's okay. Because we all have had things happen in our lives that hurts our feelings. Family is really good at hurting feelings, Yeah. They know how all the buttons to push.
Oh, don't they do?
Not that one. Oh, let me push that one.
So, Paula, you're a Cowboys fan?
Oh, yeah.
You're a Cowboys fan.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Because you like the
49er.
underdog. Do you know why? Well, I'm serious. Do you know why when there's a tornado, in Texas, they all go to the Cowboy Stadium? Well, there's never a touchdown there.
That's right.
Oh, I'm going to lose some friends over that one. I'm sorry. Oh. Okay, moving right along. So, Trina, I understand you were raised, with a silver spoon in your mouth. You, you taught Sunday school at 8 years old. So, tell me a little bit about your youth.
Tell me about what?
I guess none of that's true. Tell me about. I really like to hear where you're from.
Okay. So I can't not do this.
You don't have to. You don't need that at all.
So,
hey, that's just those are prompts. Throw it away. No, that was just a prompt. Just go with the flow.
I was raised in Colorado, in Canyon City, Colorado. I'm a military brat. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. We had very hard times. There was 5 in the family. My mom and dad were married for 49 years, and they had been together for 54 years. My father served 5 tours in Vietnam, Korea, Bay of Pigs. He was 21 years retired in the Navy. He's a naval officer. And I grew up in a family that was extremely dysfunctional when my dad was home. And in every dysfunctional way that could be dysfunction, it was that way for us. And so, and of course, back then in the 60s and 70s, PTSD wasn't really an acknowledged thing. And so, you have this guy that's coming from Vietnam, 5 tours Vietnam, and they call him tours. He's out there in the jungle fighting. And then he's Korea, and then he's Bay of Pigs. And even though Bay of Pigs was one day, there's the Korean War, and then there's, Vietnam War that lasted for a very long time. I don't think it ended till 72 or something, 74. And so, I just came from a long line of military. And so when my father was home, it was very structured, and there was very specific things that had to be done every day. And if they weren't, then it was hell to pay in the house. And there was a lot of screaming and yelling and smacking and, other not good things that happened in our home. And because I'm a fighter, I had this fighting mentality from a very young age. I don't like being hit, and I don't like people putting their hands on me. And so, I'm a fighter, and so I talk back. And I think that I was always that way. I think I was always very stand my ground no matter what, and I'll go to my grave standing my ground. If right is right and wrong is wrong, and I was a right fighter, and that never turned out well for me. Being a right fighter, I know my rights. I don't know what they were at 6 years old or 5 years old, but I know my rights. It's like, and so, of course, as I got older, it's like it kind of formed into who I became. At 8 years old, just back up a minute. Here I'm really super resentful at 6 years old at the Christmas table, and my older sisters are getting wine and I'm not. How dare you?
Not cool.
I was super mad. I was really resentful about that. I'd wait 2 years for a drink. Yep, a drink of wine. And when I had that drink of wine, it was the most fantastic, wonderful, illicit feeling I'd ever had. I have arrived. That warm sensation they talk about, all those things, So, it's like I can talk about my war series. That's why I don't do it from a podium. I talk about recovery from the podium, and I kind of tap onto things, why I qualify for Alcoholics Anonymous. Because from the moment that I took the first drink, it set in motion a craving within me. And my body is inherently flawed. When I take a drink, I cannot stop drinking. So from that day forward, at 8 years old, I am sneaking alcohol in my thermos, going to school, and drinking all day long at school. And I was a fighter. I was always in fights, constantly in fights. Remember, I told you I was this right fighter, and I was a fighter, And so because I was a military brat and we moved from different schools, civilian schools, I'm the military brat stepping in the civvy school. So let's try me, and they found out, that, yeah, try me and find out, see what you get. You get what you get because you got what you got because you did what you did. And that was the way that I grew up. Thinking like that. It's like, listen, sticks and stones will break your bones and names will never hurt you, but you put your hands on me, all bets are off. And you can talk all the talk you want to talk, but the moment you touch me, you're going to get mollywopped from one end to the other, and that's the way I was for many, many years. It's like today when I talk about it, it makes me very sick. It makes me very ill because, that spiritual side that I have today does not a lot for that, and if I get really super upset about something, that's the first thing that it hits is my spiritual being. I cannot live in that. I must write about it. I must talk to my sponsor about it. I must immediately take action because I don't want to live in that. I don't want anything messing with my serenity and my peace. I have such a serene, peaceful life today compared to this chaotic, remember this yelling and screaming almost on a daily basis. When my dad stepped back into our lives, I was probably about 10 years old and we were living in Groton, Connecticut. And this is about the time that he retired from the Navy off the sub base in Hartford in Connecticut. And I'll tell you that there was a lot of hitting and fighting and, him and Mom didn't fight. But it was us kids. He'd come after us kids like we were grown. Like it wasn't nothing for us to get punched across the room or slapped backhanded across the room or our jaw knocked out of place or whatever the case may be, And I mean, it kind of went on like that. And it wasn't just the physical. There was physical, mental, spiritual, and other things. And I don't want to bring up my dad's sins because I've forgiven my dad for everything that ever happened. And we have made amends to that. And we lived our lives differently when he passed and before he passed. And as a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous and God's healing power. So I say that with love. So that's why I don't talk about it from a podium. I don't think it needs to be at a podium. I think that's a fifth step totally with your sponsor. But I'm going to be uncensored here, and this is the uncensored side. This is why I don't talk about stuff like this because it's so heavy and it just really would affect people. And I've had that happen before while I was speaking where people got really affected behind me speaking the truth, the real truth, and nothing but the truth. Those things are no longer in my present life. And so when by the time I was 11 years old, I was already running away from home. Because there's this stuff going on at the house that's not cool, man. I'm hitchhiking at 11 years old. I'm drinking. I'm using drugs. I'm taking acid by the time I'm 12 years old. I'm drinking and I'm drinking and I'm drinking and I'm drinking. And every time there was a keg party, I was there. And every time I got a chance to run away from home and go get drunk or high, I was there. And I was right in the midst of that. And I really got high so I could enhance my drinking because a lot of me, I figured out that in my little head, for what it was worth, 11, 12 years old, 10 years old, if I do this, then I can drink more. Yeah. And I can drink longer. And so I did. and so I pretty much did that. My older sister, Kim, I'll talk a little bit about her because Kim was murdered when she was 15 years old. I was 14 years old. And they showed up at the house, and Kim was a change. Kim was one of us. She just never found her way into the rooms because she was murdered. And, the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department showed up at our front door and knocked on the door and said, one Kimberly Jean Graven we found in Stapleton Airport Field. She had been there. She had been laying there for about 2 weeks before somebody saw her from the road. They saw her body from the road, and then it took them another 2 weeks to find out that was my sister, and then they showed up at our house. And then so, that was devastating, So it's like, there we go, that crossroad. There's that crossroad. And I remember one time running away from home, and I ran straight to her. And I went to her where she was at the Owl House, the Owl House is what it was called in Canyon City. It was right next to the penitentiary. Not kidding. Like the penitentiary, is right there in Canyon City, right on First Street in Canyon City, First and Main, the biggest penitentiary, the very first penitentiary in Canyon City, Colorado, and Colorado in general. That was the first one. And so Kim was staying there at that house because she was a runaway all the time. She was a CHINS, which is a child that will not go to school. She's under 16, so she's in trouble. She's probation. The first time we ran together. The first time I got high, we were high together. The first time I did the first, Kim was always there. And so by the time she was 14, she was going to Golden Institution in Golden, Colorado, and she ran. She got all the way to the 4th level, leveled up in the RTC that she was sentenced to, and she ran. First opportunity she got, she ran, and she sent us a letter, and my mom called them and told them, because she always would give my mom a card or something, or she'd make her something, and then she'd run away. I never gave them warning of when I ran away. I just up and ran away. It was just, oh, today's the day. I'm leaving. Goodbye. The furthest I ever ran was I was with 2 other girls. I was 14. It was right after my sister got murdered. I ran from Pueblo, Colorado to Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, within less than a day, thumbing it. I'm out there on the highway with my thumb out. I'm a little girl. I'm this young teenage girl. I don't know nothing from nothing. But I thought I did. I thought I was so smart. I thought I was just it. I just knew everything, and I didn't know nothing, But I remember when I went to the Hour House with Kim, and she told me, she said, Katrina, you can keep going down the road you're going, and I'm telling you, it's a really dark road, or you can change that curve. And I was like, whatever. That's exactly what I told her, whatever. I loved my sister. We fought a lot when we were younger, and then when we were I was 12 and she was 13, we stopped fighting. We didn't fight anymore. We grew a tremendous bond. And then, and then she got sentenced up there, and I would go and see her up there. My greatest regret is that I refused to go see her one week because I was upset with her. And then she ran. And then within 2 weeks, she was murdered. And they could track her all the way down to the last 20 minutes at the party, and they know who did it. And of course, he's long been sentenced to death and been gone. She wasn't the only one he murdered. He murdered several. So she's probably one of 8, and he was a serial killer up there. And she was after the time that Ted Bundy was up there, so we knew it wasn't Ted Bundy. So, and it was this other guy that they found out. It took him 40 years to figure out that it was him and one of his, and she put up a fight. They said she put up a fight. And I mean, these are all the things that I'm being told at 14 years old. She put up a fight, and and she was a fighter like me. She was a right fighter, just like I was, because we didn't know any better. See, because at 8 years old, what I discovered is nobody's going to protect me but me. So therefore, I shall protect me. And if there's somebody around me that needs protected, then I'm going to protect them too. And that's where that comes from, is I'm going to be your protector. And it's isn't any wonder what I do for a living is that I help people, and that I'm able to be of service. And I don't have to be overly protective today, that I have a balance. In that. When she was murdered, I was out. And like I said, the very next year, wasn't even the following year, I ran from the high school in Pueblo and out in County High and all the way to Salt Lake City, Utah. And they picked us up in Salt Lake. Cop did. He thought I was 18. He got me all the way to the jail. He's like, oh, score, I got an 18-year-old. And I was like, oh, score, I'm only 14. Ha ha. He was pissed. Woo, he's mad. Woo, he had to take me back to runaway shelter. And I wound up in the runaway shelter, and that was the very first time that I told the truth about what was happening in my home to a lady there. I grew this, I don't know why it was a bond. I don't know why I felt comfortable with her, but my mom came all the way up there to pick me up, and I refused to go. I refused to go home with her. It wasn't 2 years later that I wound up being taken, and I became an emancipated teenager at the age of 16 years old. I was an absolute mess. I didn't know how to live life. I had no social skills. I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to do anything. I knew how to do a job. I knew how to work. I didn't know how to save money. I didn't know anything. So I basically grew up. I had a boyfriend at 15 years old. Of course, it seems like such a great idea at 16 to move in with my boyfriend. And that was absolute, 200 people in a house to have a party every single night. And, there was nothing wrong with that, And that's pretty much how I lived for a long time. I went home for a little while, for just about a month, just to visit my parents. They had moved here to Arkansas, down in Mineral Springs, and I was still living up in Colorado. And then when I went back to Colorado, we kind of severed, me and the boyfriend severed, and I moved in my own little place. It cost me $50, all utilities paid. I'm telling you, it was 2 rooms, a bathroom over in one corner with a door, and then a little shower over here, and here's your kitchen, and here's your front room, living room, da-da-da-da-da. And it was this little white house with red trim, and it was on this little really shabby, sad lot, and that's where I lived. And I'd walk every single day to work, and it was about 4 miles to work. I weighed probably 80 pounds if I was lucky, and I got pregnant. And everything stops when there's a baby involved. Everything stops. And so that's kind of how was my motto, is like, they can't make a decision. I have to make the decision for them. I can't be drinking and using and doing all this stuff with this other person. That's not fair to them. And so when I was pregnant and while I breastfed, I did not drink or use. But I'm telling you, the moment that I got an opportunity to, I did. And it was right back on the ball game. And then I got pregnant again. And then my daughter, Kimberly, and so my oldest is Janine, and then my daughter, Kimberly, was born. She was born 2.5 months, 2 months, 3 weeks early. And so she was very tiny. She looked like Janine's baby doll. She was so tiny, tiny. And she lived to be 2 months and 4 days old. And she died of crib death in my arms. And I was 20 years old when that happened. And so that was kind of like the sinking of our marriage, me and my first marriage, because, that was my first future ex-husband right there, that boyfriend. Yeah. So, not kidding. It's serious. So with that, Kimberly died in my arms. And then and I got pregnant again. It was a little boy, and I lost him. And then I did not get pregnant again until Janine was 5, almost 5. I got pregnant, and that's my son Jacob. And so I have 2 living children, Janine and Jacob, and they are my world. And at the time, I really took advantage of that because I didn't really see that. I think that my daughter says often, Mom, when you were a mom, you were a really, really good mom. And when you weren't, you really weren't, And that was such a true statement because when I was present and in their lives, I was a really good mom. However, it wouldn't take me long to get out. I was 80, 85 pounds. I was always high. I was always drunk. I was always doing something. I was always caught back up. And I did the church thing, and I did people are going to lay hands on you, and da-da-da-da-da. And, all this misunderstanding of, it's like there was always some thought about what God was or what he should be or what I should be or what I should not be or whatever the case may be. And that wasn't the case. I didn't have a clue about who God was or what he was or who I was or where I was going or what I was doing. I didn't know nothing. It's like I'm this 16-year-old girl learning how to live, an emancipated teenager, not living it with any skills. I'm pretty smart. I got my GED. I did do that. I did manage to do that. And, I didn't have any problems doing it. I went through a college course and did that. So it would prove to be a high school equivalency because I did the college way. And, so I was just like, yeah, but my life was just so entangled and enthralled and dark. And so I wound up leaving my kids thinking like that moment of clarity, where you leave your children with somebody you hope will do right by your kids, and that was my parents. Yeah. And so they were completely different. And then not so much with my daughter, but, they raised my son. They raised my son and they did a really great job with my son. With my daughter, same thing happened with my daughter. And then I removed her from the home. After she was brought to me, when I was in the deepest part of my disease, she was brought to me, and there was just no way that I could have her there because I didn't even know how to get out of where I was at that point because I was so deep in my own addiction, in my own alcoholism, in my own world. The only thing I knew at that point was strippers and dealers and alcohol and like most of my 20s, I don't remember. I don't recall it. My family can recall it for me because they were there and sober. I cannot recall things because I was mostly in a blackout. It's like, and then I'm out, and then I'm in, then I'm out, and then I'm in, and then I'm out. And that's pretty much how it was for many, many years, probably till I was about 28. And that's when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous for the very first time at top of Texas in Amarillo, Texas. And I was pretty mangled when I walked in there.
So you went from Colorado to Texas. Now, somewhere in your disease, as you called it, did you have trouble with the law?
Yeah. So where I got into trouble was in Texas. That's where I got into trouble, and that's why I wound up in Gatesville. And so I wound up in the state penitentiary, which was across the street. And I'm telling you that when you find a real bottom like that, it's like your family don't talk to you, your kid doesn't want anything to do with you, you're writing letters, they won't respond, nothing, not a thing. What I didn't know is that in me writing letters to my daughter, that she was reading them. And she still had those letters. Even when she saw me at 2.5 years sober, she still had those letters.
How old was your daughter when you were incarcerated?
She was 13.
And so
14, almost 14.
How long were you incarcerated? Okay, so you did 2 years. And then during that time, your family...
So I was in the state penitentiary for a year in 97. I pulled chain in 97 to the state penitentiary in Gatesville. And then I pulled chain again from the state penitentiary over to Hackberry unit, which is right across into the regular penitentiary, to a substance abuse for felony offenders program. And that's why I claim the sobriety date of January 16th of 98. That's the day that I started being for real sober. Okay. Even though I was sober in the state penitentiary, I wasn't really sober. There was no peace of mind in my mind.
Sure.
And so I claimed that date.
I haven't heard that term, pulled chain, before. What does that mean?
It's where you pull a chain from the county jail into prison. That's where you get shackled up and you do the 2-inch shuffle.
Oh, yeah.
And you get to ride on the blue bus.
Okay.
Pulling chain.
All right. So you did 2 years, and I'm
1 year in the state and 1 year in the safety program.
So when so I get it, you're at your bottom.
Oh yeah. When I came out, I had nothing. I had nobody, nowhere to go, and I went into a co-ed halfway house called Billy Meek Center in Lubbock, Texas, and immediately started going to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. So, but you had a choice. You didn't have to go.
Yeah.
Okay, and you went. Now, tell me what that experience was like. Your transition from, getting out of the incarcerated environment. Now you're out in the civilian world, and you're choosing to go because you been introduced to recovery in the second?
And when I was 28 years old is the first time I walked into the rooms of AA.
But you were incarcerated during that time.
No,
That's what I'm
after
asking
that
you.
time. So in that 4 years before I claim a sobriety date, and it was really 3 years from 1994 is the first time I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and so I sobered up at 31.
Right, and I'm looking for the desire. Not so you did the introduction. Well, that's
Really wasn't any desire.
That's what I'm looking
I got
for.
Into the state penitentiary, and I'm sitting there looking out the window at all the other penitentiaries.
Yeah.
You're looking at Riverside. You're looking at Mountain View.
And you have no intentions of getting clean.
No, it
sober?
wasn't even that I had no intentions. It's just my mind wasn't right.
Right.
And then they started talking about, would I be interested in this program? And I just kept my head down and did what they asked. It's like you can get in prison and you can do your time or the time can do you.
Right.
That's the way it is. And when the time does you is where you're going to get fights, you're going to be in SEG, you're going to be in things like that. And I did not choose to do that.
Right.
I chose to keep my head down, do my time, and try to get out. And then when they gave me the opportunity to go to Safe P, because I knew, and when I called my probation officer the day that I turned myself in, when I called him, I called him on the phone. I'm up for days, and I said, Thomas, if you don't help me, I'm going to die. And I knew that. I knew that to my core that I was going to die if I didn't stop.
That's what I was looking for. You just hit it. That's the turning point.
Yeah.
That's when you asked for help.
It was a day that I was sitting there drinking and getting high, and I remember going in the bathroom and washing my hands, and I looked up in the mirror, and it was like the first time I ever saw myself in the mirror for years and years and years. I looked at myself every day in a reflection as I got dressed to go on stage to dance. It was the first time I saw myself. I really saw myself. And it was like God talking to me, and he says, lady, if you don't stop, you're going to die. And it was like it shook me. It shook me to my core.
And you were how old at that point?
I was 30. I was 31 at that point.
So tell me, so I got the turning point. You're done. I mean, inside you're done.
I was 30 when that happened.
Okay, so inside you're done.
Yeah.
But so tell me about the transition from being done to the beginning of your recovery journey.
So the transition of me being done was me calling Thomas and telling him that. He called me into the office. I went into the office. Of course, he gave me a drug test, and I failed miserably, and, alcohol and drugs all over the place. And then I chose to do the marijuana maintenance program. I asked him to allow me to stay out for Christmas and New Year's, and he did. He let me stay out. And then I turned myself in on January 15th of 1997. And then I pulled chain in January 16th of 1998 over to Safe P, and that's my sobriety date, my claimed sobriety date. But that transition, going from this is what I'm going to do. I remember this PO telling me, he's like, you're going to go in there and they're going to tell you stuff and you're going to have to talk. I said, I ain't telling nobody crap about me. None of their business what's happening in my life. That's not their business, And of course, I used a few choice words, not that, but trying to watch my mouth. And so when I went into Safe P, I remember sitting down in the group the very first time. The same day that I got there, same day they pulled me through the thing and got me into the unit, and I put me in a group, I guess some kind of group they were doing. And she asked me what was going on. I had no idea what I was doing. It was like, it's brand new there. And, there's like 300 women there, and I don't know what's going on. We're all circled up. Yeah. And she asked me, she said, what do you want out of this? I said, for my mind to be free. I just want to get out of this prison that I live in up here. And so that's, the day that I pulled the chain, and that's the day I chose for my sobriety day.
Okay,
Pull the chain and put the plug in the jug.
Plug in the jug.
I said she pulled the chain and put the plug in the jug.
Amen.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm looking for then is the beginning of, that was your mental decision. What happened when you got out of prison? and you made a conscious decision to go and get help. Share that with us.
So the
What's that
Billy
look
Meek
like?
Center is based around, it's a 12-step program. So it's placed in that 12-step program. It's a very structured therapeutic community, TC community. So everything in Safe PU is very therapeutic community, and it's always all 12-step recovery based. So even in the facility in prison that I was still in, and the Billy Meek Center, once I moved out of the prison and those jail bars, the gates clanked. I moved into this facility, this co-ed facility. Before I moved in, my sponsor at the time, who's still sponsoring me, Miss Susie Minot, she was writing me letters on the first step, the second step, the third step, and the fourth step. And everything that she wrote me, she wrote me 16 pages on how to do it. I'd write her 16 pages on it, done, And she would just be like, holy cow, as she received these letters, she's like, she's changing, because she stuck it out. This lady stuck it out those 4 years of me coming in and out, in and out, in and out,
So,
So when she finished, when I got to my fourth step, I had to sit on it because I was in prison. And so I had to sit on it until I got out. So I think that I had my first spiritual awakening in prison because I had written out the fourth step, and I had shared a little bit with my therapist, but I hadn't gotten to share it with a sponsor at the time. And so I remember being very, very angry all the time and just walking around with my fist and just angry and gritted teeth and all of these things. And I remember one morning Yolanda Zapata standing next to me. I shared that. She's standing next to me and she's looking up in the sky, and we're going to Chow Hall. And I come out right beside her. She's 1 and I'm 13. So, and the guard, as I was walking out, he said, 13's a great number. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, 13's a great number. I was like, why is that? He said 12 disciples, and who's 13? And I was like,
let me interject for a sec. So we've got a lot of folks that are probably listening to this show that you said a few things right now that would probably already put question marks over people's heads. So without describing each step of the 12 step, just give me a synopsis of what the 12 steps are. That's a synopsis. What does that mean?
Spiritual awakening.
Well, that's another one I'm going to come to. But when you say 12 steps, what does that mean? Somebody's listening to this for the first time. They're going, what are you talking about, steps? What does that mean?
Well, in step 1 is where you admitted you were powerless over alcohol in your life. It became unmanageable, and so how is your life unmanageable? It's like I can admit that my life was, that I was an alcoholic, that I had a problem, that I drank too much, that I used too much, that I did everything too much, and I did it to an extreme. But then let's talk about that spiritual malady that sits in us in step 1, which is my unmanageability. So that's mind, body, and will. And so what does that mean? So my mind is inherently flawed, and my body is inherently flawed. So let's start with the body, mind, will, I should say, right? So body is, it's like if I take a drink, then I cannot stop drinking. I'm inherently flawed. So when I drink, then I cannot stop drinking. So I continue to drink. And then in my mind is inherently flawed because if I don't have a drink in my body, then I'm craving for a drink and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get my next drink. And I'm inherently flawed in my mind with this. And so then we'll talk about the will, which is my spiritual malady or my bedevilments, that I can't hold down relationships, that I can't hold a job, that I can't have friends. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know how to be a sister. I don't know how to be a daughter. I don't know how to have right relationships with people. I don't know how to do any of those things. And that's me. And I'm selfish and self-centered to the extreme because it's all about me. It is all about me. It's about how I'm going to get it, how I'm going to do it, this, and that. Just all over, constantly running through my mind. And then here comes my bedevilment and my manipulation and my selfish and self-centeredness and my ability to get what I want and go to any length to do that. And so step 1.
Okay.
That's straight up step 1,
All All right, so folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to continue Trina's story. Thanks for listening, and hang on, here we come. All right, shoutoutfromthepit.com. This is the Old Rucker coming back with you with our friends Mandy, Paula, and Trina. Trina was just sharing with us her idea of the 12 steps, and I'm going to pass it back to you, Trina. If you could give us a synopsis of what that means. I mean, I know when you went into your recovery journey and you heard this, it was like, what? What does that mean? So you learned what it was, and so, tell the listening audience in your own words what 12 steps means.
So what the 12 steps means to me personally is that I get to live a life that's completely different from where I was at the beginning. I had to come to believe into something greater than me, and it certainly wasn't me, because I can't fix me because I'm broken. And, I came to believe in something, and then, I had the person teach me and guide me through the 12 steps. And when we got to the fourth step, they helped me clean house, clean out all that stuff that held me down. So I'll just say it the way that I best know how, and how I feel what a fourth step is. It's like if you walk out to a garden, you have an irrigation system. And while the water's running free and flow through each row to everything that you're trying to grow, it's the same thing for the fourth step. And in order for that water to run freely, you have to clean it out. You have to clean out all those things that held you down, that locked you down, that kept you from the God of your understanding, whomever that is, and allow the rivers to run free so that God can run free and through you.
I'm imagining what you're just saying. After you just shared your experience and and you alluded to a lot of stuff. Thank you for not, getting specific, because I don't know if this my virgin ears can handle some of this stuff. But thank you for sharing that. But I gotta imagine that when you say, cleaning out the stuff, that you had a lot of ugly stuff. How in the world do you step up to the plate and admit that stuff? Who do you do it with, and what's that look like?
Well, I do that through a sponsor. And what a sponsor is, somebody who walks me and teaches me about the 12 steps and the tools that come with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what she chose to teach me was straight out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so, alluding back to the irrigation ditch, it's like God reaching down inside and pulling all that stuff out of the flow of the water, so that it's able to flow through, and that's for me, and it's allowed me to be free. And so my first spiritual experience was me being so angry and clenching my fist and gritting my teeth and being so angry. And I don't think I was ever really like an angry person, more that I was a rager. I was that rager person. It's like a continuous rage inside. And it was just like, I remember that morning that I was standing there and I looked up in the sky, and there was a star, and there's always this one star that's always there when I was in prison. And it was just the brightest star ever. And I remember saying, thank you, Jesus. And when I said that, it was like something reached inside of me and just pulled all that anger right out of me. And I cried for 2 weeks. And something happened. Something switched. Something changed. I can't explain it. I can just tell you that what it felt like. It was like rivers running through, and there was a spiritual awakening that happened. And it was just like I was light, and I couldn't stop smiling, and I couldn't stop being joyful and happy. I couldn't be anything but that, And so when I did finally get the opportunity to share that fourth step outside with another human being, I was able to walk into the sixth and seventh step and talk about those bedevilments and that spirituality side, where those things that kept me held down, that you heard me talk about earlier, about how, I had to be a right fighter, and I have to be these things, and I have to do that, and I have to do that. And it's like my ego just egomaniac constantly. And and my sponsor taught me how to write about those things. And I continue to write about those things all these years later. We use a format called the Dear God letters. and they're pretty powerful and they're pretty wonderful, and they teach us, it's like the resentments and, why I'm resentful as this person. How does it affect me? And what's my fears? And, what's the character defect that shows up when I'm doing this? And then I'm writing a prayer. And so, Paula has this thing on bless them and change me, it's like, so change me and pray for them, and because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what other people do. It's about how I react to them. And so, it's not been an easy walk. When I very first got sober, I would not allow people to hug me or come near me, or I kept everybody at bay. And people in Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to love them and allow them to love me. And they taught me through, I think I talked about it one night when I spoke about Bill and Joe Luster, just fantastic people, just loving and kind. And my sponsor talked me into going to dinner with this new couple. And I was like, okay, sure. Yeah. Okay. I'll go. And, and I get there and, and I was like, hi, my name's Katrina. And I went to shake her hand and she's like, oh, honey, we don't do handshakes. We do hugs. And I had never allowed anybody to hug me. And I was 2.5 years sober. I just didn't allow people to get near me and hug me. And, because it's just like, I think that I was still hurt and damaged at that point. And there was some things that I needed to heal from. And that was the beginning of that healing for me. And now, it's like now I hug everybody and I love on everybody because I just love everybody. And,
I've seen it.
I absolutely just love people today. And, if somebody doesn't want to hug, that's okay. That's okay. And it's kind of funny because like even when I run up on people who remind me of me, they'll hug me.
Trina, let me ask you a question because this sounds, everything I've heard right now sounds like, going through the steps, the stuff that you're doing. It sounds like a lot of work. So what is your motivation to just not quit? I mean, you ever get tired, just go forget about it? How do you keep going?
I think it was about 8 years sober. I got really angry. I got really angry at God because I was doing all the right things, working with people, helping others, doing all these things, and all these wrong things were happening. And so when I was about 8 years sober, I had gotten remarried after 28 years of not being married. And then, not only that, but then I also found out I had cancer. And then within 10 months of that marriage, this guy's out cheating. And it's like, my picker's still broken, y'all. My pickers, I still don't know how to have a relationship with another human being. And so my pickers are broken, and I keep choosing these same people, the same guys, same different faces, different names, same relationships every single time. So I got really, really angry, and I got really, really spiritually sick over that. And so I had to continue to do work. And I remember my sponsor at the time, she said, let's talk about God. And I said, yeah, let's talk about God. And there was just such begrudgance in my voice, and she's like, whoa, and she started talking about God, and I started just crying. I was inconsolable. Like I was just crying so hard because I had gotten so close to God and I had such a relationship with him and I could hear him so soundly. And because of my anger, I couldn't hear his voice anymore, because I was so angry with him for everything that happened. And she turned me on to this book. And it's not AA approved, so I don't care. It was called Unconventional Conversations with God. And I read that book, and it changed my whole outlook on what God really was. Because I came into AA believing that God was this one thing, and he wasn't. And I was just like boxing him up. Like, this is God. No. Like, God is everything. He is all things. He is everything. And I don't box God today. And he doesn't allow me to box him either. And I have a relationship with him today where I hear his voice soundly and I see soundly when he tells me something. And what it's given me, what the 12 steps has enabled me to do, and given me and gifted me. Let me just say that, have gifted me, with in 2010 when my dad died. He had a massive heart attack. This is the guy, and all these things, all this fury and that came from when I was a little girl. Here it is that God, one day in a truck, we're sitting with my son, and my dad's sitting there, and my mom's in the hospital, and this is how God works. He's sitting in the truck, and my little boy says, "Mom, how do you pray?" And I said, "You just talk to God." And then my dad chimes in, and he says, "You just talk to God, just like I'm sitting here talking to you, Jacob." And it was like a river running through. There's that river running through again, that water. And there was a healing that happened that day, and a forgiveness, because at 2 years sober, at 3 years sober, at 4 years sober, I would not hug my dad. He was just my dad. At 14 years sober, when my dad hit the ground and he passed away, he was my daddy. And I loved him, and he was the dad he always supposed to be. And he made his amends, his living amends, as I made my living amends to him and my mom and my family. And that is what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous does. It heals, and it heals you so deeply that you don't have to return back to it. And you don't have to keep reliving that and reliving that hurt and that pain over and over and over again. That's what this program does for you. It allows you to do that. My sponsor is not my God. My God is my God. God is my only God. My sponsor is the guiding light that shows me the way and shows me the path. And when I get off in the chigger bites and she says, "You're off the path," it's because I got chigger bites all over me. She means it. And the 12 steps, the maintenance side of it is that I write myself when I'm wrong. I write the situation when I'm wrong. I write about the situation. I pray and I meditate on a daily basis. And I stay connected to God on a daily basis. And I work with other alcoholics, and I work with others. And it doesn't even necessarily have to mean that it's with others, from AA. It can be with anybody. Because sometimes we're just called to service for anyone. Sometimes it's, let me help you find your way to your family. Let me help you through the store because you're struggling navigating. I don't know you, but can I help you, please? And I would not have ever in a million years done that back in the day. I would not have ever in a million years not wanted to fight somebody over something silly back in the day. And today, that is not who I am. This tough demeanor that I walked and kept this plutonium steel wall down around me so nobody could keep everybody at bay. That wall is gone. It's open, and it's allowed me to be of service in ways that I never even imagined. I think with my daughter, I'll talk a little bit about her because she was probably my toughest amends. She's very, very angry with her mama. And she did a fist step on her mom about everything in her life that's been wrong because of the decisions that I made. And that's what it's really about right there. It's about holding yourself accountable to the things that you did, the situations you created that had a ripple effect in the people around you because of your drinking, because of your decision making, because of your behaviors, because all of that stuff ripple effects back to your family. And my kids were impacted by that. My son, not so much as my daughter. My son was just negated from his mom. And we built a relationship from that point, from 2.5 years sober when I was allotted back in their lives. And my daughter, I remember her coming in one day and she just comes into my house and she just lays on my bed like this. And she's like, "Oh, I just love it here." And I was like, great. "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, I just love it here because this is so cool, Mom. This is the mom I remember, And so even today, there's times where she will talk about hurts and pains that even today, I was like, I apologize for the things that I did that created that situation for and that belief system that she had to hang on to. And as I heal, through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and through God's love, she also heals. And my son is healed. And, I have this incredible relationship with my daughter and with my son and with my son-in-law. And he's just like my own kid. And they absolutely love Mandy. They think Mandy is the bomb. And my granddaughter, Kristen, thinks Mandy is just the shiznits. And
Shiznits?
the shiznits. She
What is a shiznit?
Whatever it is, it's all good.
Hey, let me ask you a question, Trina.
Sure.
Actually, I got a few questions if you could just help me out with this. So the first one is, so let's just imagine there's a 14-year-old girl that's lost in the sauce out there right now, hurting from the neck down, neck up. She's just done. And she somehow stumbles onto this show. This is my first question. What would you say to her if you could look at her in her hurting eyes right now? What would you say?
That there's a way out. That she doesn't have to walk in the same path that I walked in. That there's a way out.
Second question, and I'm actually going somewhere with these questions. So, my second question is: let's say that there's a lady that didn't find her journey as early as you did. Let's say that she's midlife, 40s or something like that. What would you and she's walked a very similar route to yours. What would you say to her?
There's a way out. There's a way out. Would you like me to show you the way?
All right, so that leads me to we have a message board on shoutoutfromthepit.com. We get a lot of fantastic feedback from there, and I appreciate the insight. In fact, that message board is to help us with your thoughts on our program, thoughts how we can improve, including resources that we actually vet before we post them. I always want to ask our guest if they would like to be a personal resource. We vet some of these too, by the way. We just don't. Hey, somebody wants to talk to Trina, but would you be interested in being a resource?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that said, we won't actually put you on the resource page, but those listening to the show, you can just reach out to the message board. Myself or Redbeard will get these, and then we'll vet them, to make sure that they're not off the charts here, and then we'll forward it to you. All right, Mandy, you have any thoughts you want to share?
I probably do, but nothing comes to mind right now.
I think the only thought that I would like to share is I want to thank you and sharing your story, because there are a lot of people out there that need to hear, could probably relate to Katrina. I learned more about Katrina tonight, and I've known her for almost, for a while, and it's nice to hear that and be able to be real. We're real. Sorry, we're real in AA, but we're not always real with each other as far as our story on a regular basis, unless we get to know each other. And I think doing this is a perfect example of how to get out to those people that aren't normally in the rooms yet. Maybe that's what I meant to say.
It's good insight.
Yeah, I think I might want to add to that. That's a good point there, Paula, because like you said, we've learned a lot about Katrina tonight. Excuse me. I remember I was one of those women in the midlife crisis type deal when I came into the rooms. And I thought my life was going to be over. That's it, because that's all I did was drink and party. And so, ultimately I thought, that's it. I've got to go to AA. I've got to stop drinking. That's it. Life's over. But it isn't. It isn't. There is so much more. And this is part of it. It's getting to know each other on a personal level and to have that, the camaraderie that we have. It's an amazing fellowship. And, like Katrina said, there is a way out, and I'm so grateful that I found that way, but I did not do it alone. And that's the amazing thing. See, my world was so small. Today it is just, it's I've got the whole world in my hands. I really do. I mean, that sounds kind of cliche, and they're genuine people, absolutely genuine. So it's amazing what you do here, Bob. I absolutely love it. Team Bob. It's, podcasts. I never really listened to them, but then since I met Bob, since I met you, I did start listening to them. I was like, it's such a relaxed way to be yourself around others. And, there's no judgment. There's nothing but love that's shared in these rooms and on these podcasts. And, if you're out there and you're lost and you don't know what to do, please just ask for help. That's all you need to do is ask for help, and somebody will be there.
Thanks, Mandy. Closing thoughts from our guest tonight, Trina. You are you're a hero. You know how I feel about Mandy and Paula. I've just to get to know you a little better. I'm blessed. But I'm going to reserve final thoughts with you.
So my final thoughts would be, that if you need help, there's help out there. We don't do this alone. It's a we program. It's not an I program. It's a we program. It's also a wanted program, not a needed program. And until I wanted it, nothing changed. And then when I wanted it, I can't let go of it.
Wow, well said. Well said. So that's it, folks. Thanks for listening in, and please share our show with folks that could use some encouragement and extra tools for their recovery journey. Remember, you are not alone, and if no one's told you that they love you today, we love you. God bless you, and have an outstanding recovery day. This is the Old Rucker. Peace out.